Zeria and Lyra had always known that their world operated by rules, unbending and cold. Their planet, Drellis, was a place where emotions were seen as a weakness, something to be avoided at all costs. The people of Drellis prided themselves on logic, order, and discipline. Feelings were not a part of their daily lives. For generations, the Drellisians had maintained peace and harmony through strict control, and emotions were kept tightly locked away. In such a world, Zeria and Lyra were exemplary citizens, ambitious, clever, and always following the rules. But everything had changed when the two of them had made a mistake that shook the very foundation of their society. Zeria, with her sharp mind and meticulous planning, had been the leader of a diplomatic mission to negotiate with a neighboring planet. Lyra, her partner, was skilled in strategy and quick thinking, always able to find a solution when things went wrong. Their mission had started well, but as the days passed, tensions began to rise. The other planet's leaders were demanding more than was agreed upon. Zeria, frustrated by their unwillingness to compromise, allowed a moment of emotion to slip through her control. In that single instant, the alien leaders saw an opening, an opportunity to manipulate the situation. Lyra had noticed the change in her partner, but it was too late. The peaceful negotiations turned into a disaster. The other planet's leaders used Zeria's emotional lapse against them. And soon, the deal was off. The consequences were immediate. Back on Trellis, emotions were seen as a source of weakness. The leaders of the planet's council were unforgiving. Zeria and Lyra's mistake was more than just a failed negotiation. It was a sign of weakness, and weakness could not be tolerated in the Drellisian society. The council sentenced them to a harsh punishment, exile to Earth, a planet known for its chaotic, emotional inhabitants. It was a punishment meant to teach them the importance of emotional control, but it was also an unknown journey into a world far from the strict order they had always known. When Zeria and Lyra arrived on Earth, they were both overwhelmed and confused. The air was different, filled with the sounds of people talking, laughing, arguing, and living. It was like nothing they had ever experienced. Drellis was a place of quiet efficiency, where the only sounds were the hum of machines and the distant voices of the council's officials. Earth, on the other hand, was alive with noise, color, and movement. At first, they tried to blend in. They had been given the ability to disguise themselves, to appear as humans, but the task was more challenging than they had anticipated. Zeria, who had always relied on logic, found herself confused by the randomness of human behavior. People on Earth didn't always act according to any set rules. They smiled at strangers, fought with family members, and cried when they were sad, all things that had no place in Drellis. Lyra, who had always been the more adaptable of the two, found herself fascinated by the differences. She had never seen so much emotion in one place. It was both beautiful and frightening to her. One day, as they walked through the busy streets of a large city, Zeria's attention was drawn to a small shop on the corner. The shop was filled with paintings, sculptures, and colorful objects. It looked nothing like the cold, sterile buildings of Drellis. Zeria was curious, and Lyra, ever the curious one, nudged her to go inside. The inside of the shop was warm and inviting. It smelled of paint and wood, and the walls were covered with vibrant paintings of landscapes, people, and animals. A woman stood behind the counter, her hands covered in paint, smiling as she worked on a canvas. She looked up as Zeria and Lyra entered, her eyes full of warmth. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice soft and welcoming. Zeria and Lyra stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. They had never encountered a person like her before. The woman's smile was genuine, and there was something about her kindness that seemed to reach into their hearts in a way they didn't understand. "I'm Elena," the woman said, introducing herself. "I run this little art shop. It's a place for people to relax, enjoy some creativity, and, well, just be themselves." Zeria was puzzled by the concept of being themselves. On Drellis, there was no need for self-expression. People followed the rules, and that was enough. But here, on Earth, people seemed to express their inner feelings through art. The idea was foreign to her, but it sparked something within her, a curiosity about how humans could live so freely, embracing their emotions. Over the next few days, Zaria and Lyra returned to the shop. Alina showed them how to paint, how to create with their hands what their hearts felt. The two alien girls began to understand something about Earth and its inhabitants that they had never known before. Humans lived with their hearts on their sleeves. They laughed, they cried, they expressed every part of themselves through their words, their actions, and their art. Though they didn't understand it all yet, Zaria and Lyra started to feel something stir inside them. It wasn't just the beauty of the paintings or the kindness of Alina. It was something deeper. They had come to Earth as punishment, expecting only hardship and lessons about control. But what they were beginning to discover was something entirely different, a world full of emotions, full of warmth, full of life. And maybe, just maybe, it was a place where they could finally learn what it meant to truly feel. Zaria and Lyra continued to visit Alina's art shop, a place that seemed to breathe life in a way they had never experienced before. It wasn't just a shop. It was a doorway into a world full of color, creativity, and emotion. At first, the two alien girls had come simply out of curiosity, intrigued by Alina's art and the strange, colorful images she created. But over time, they found themselves coming back again and again, almost without thinking. The atmosphere in the shop was so different from the cold, ordered world of Trellis. Every corner of the space was filled with something alive. Paintings, sculptures, clay pots, and sketches of people, animals, and scenes from Earth's natural world. There was a joy in it that Zaria and Lyra didn't fully understand, but something about it made them feel like they were beginning to connect to something deeper. Alina, for her part, had noticed the two strange visitors. She had first seen them when they walked into the shop, looking confused and out of place. Zaria, tall and serious, and Lyra, with her quick, curious movements, were unlike anyone Alina had ever met. They didn't seem to fit in with the busy city around them, and their quiet, reserved nature stood in sharp contrast to the cheerful energy of the shop. At first, Alina had assumed they were just shy, maybe tourists or travelers. But over the next few days, it became clear that they were much more than that. The two girls didn't speak much, but their eyes would follow the brushstrokes on the canvases, the movement of the paint, the shaping of the clay. They seemed to absorb everything around them, their faces filled with a mixture of curiosity and wonder. Alina decided to make them feel welcome, speaking to them gently, explaining the concepts of art and creativity. "You know," Alina said one afternoon as Zaria washed her paint, "art is a way to express feelings. It's not always about being perfect. It's about sharing what's inside of you." Zaria and Lyra exchanged a glance. They had never heard anything like this before. To them, feelings were something to control, something that could weaken a person. Art, in their world, was only used for education, for practicality, never for emotional expression. Alina smiled, sensing their confusion. "I know it's different, but sometimes, when you let your emotions guide you, you can create something beautiful, something that speaks to others." Zaria found herself thinking about this a lot over the next few days. The more time she spent in the shop, the more she felt like she was beginning to understand something important. She began to experiment with paint herself. Her brushstrokes were hesitant at first, unsure, but slowly she began to find her rhythm. She created small, abstract patterns, colors swirling together in a way she had never allowed herself to experience before. It was freeing, but it was also scary. She wasn't used to the feeling of not being in control. Lyra, on the other hand, took to the art much more quickly. She loved the idea of creating something out of nothing, of expressing herself without using words. She had always been more willing to embrace new things, even when they felt strange. She started creating little sculptures with clay, shaping them into animals and abstract figures. She would lose herself in the process, her hands working automatically, while her mind wandered freely. As the days passed, the bond between the two aliens and Alina grew stronger. Alina became like a guide to them, showing them the power of human emotion and how it could be channeled into something beautiful. Zaria, usually so reserved, found herself opening up more. She even began to talk to Alina about her own world, about Drellis, where emotions were suppressed and where people lived by strict codes of behavior. Alina listened attentively, never judging, only offering understanding. "You know, Zaria," Alina said one day as they sat together, "maybe the reason you're struggling here isn't because Earth is so different, but because you're so used to holding back what you feel. You're afraid to let go." Zaria was taken aback. She had never thought about it that way. She had always prided herself on her ability to stay calm, to remain in control. But Alina's words had struck a chord deep within her. Could it be that the reason she felt so lost was because she was afraid to let go of her emotions? Lyra, overhearing the conversation, smiled softly. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending we don't have feelings," she said. "Maybe it's time we start living like humans." Alina chuckled, as if she understood exactly what Lyra meant. "That's the spirit," she said with a wink. As the weeks went by, Zaria and Lyra started to feel more at home on Earth. They still didn't fully understand everything about human emotions, but they were beginning to see the beauty in it. They could see how humans used their feelings to create, to love, to connect with each other. For the first time, they started to understand that emotions weren't something to be feared or controlled. They were a powerful force, one that could bring people together and create incredible things. One evening, after a long day of painting and sculpting, Zaria and Lyra sat together on the steps outside Alina's shop, watching the sunset. The sky was a mix of oranges, pinks, and purples, a beautiful display of color that seemed to match the growing warmth in their hearts. "I think I'm starting to understand," Zaria said quietly, her voice soft with wonder. "Maybe emotions aren't so bad after all." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "Maybe they're what make us truly alive." And for the first time, both Zaria and Lyra realized that Earth was not just a punishment. It was a place where they could learn, grow, and discover something about themselves they had never known. The more time Zaria and Lyra spent on Earth, the more they began to see the world through different eyes. Their days were filled with painting, sculpting, and discussing the mysteries of human emotion. Alina's shop had become a place of refuge for the two alien girls, a place where they could express themselves in ways they never thought possible. They were no longer just visitors in a strange world. They were beginning to feel at home. Zaria, who had always prided herself on being logical and precise, found herself struggling with the idea of emotion. She was used to keeping her thoughts organized, her actions measured, but now she was learning that emotions were a part of life that couldn't be controlled. At first, she had been resistant to the idea, seeing it as a weakness. But now, as she painted and sculpted, she felt something stirring deep inside her. It was as though she was unlocking a part of herself she had never known existed. Lyra, on the other hand, was more open to the experience. She had always been more adaptable than Zaria, more willing to embrace new things. She felt a natural connection to the human way of life, where emotions were expressed freely. She loved the unpredictability of it all. The way humans could laugh one moment and cry the next, the way they could feel joy and sorrow so deeply. To her, this was the beauty of life, and she reveled in it. One afternoon, as the two of them worked on a large mural in the shop, Alina came over and sat beside them. She smiled as she watched them paint, her eyes soft with admiration. "You two have come so far," Alina said. "When you first came in here, you barely spoke a word. Now, you're creating some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen." Zaria and Lyra exchanged a glance. It was true. When they had first arrived, they had been unsure of how to express themselves. But now, their paintings and sculptures spoke volumes. Zaria had begun to create large abstract pieces that were filled with swirling colors. Bold reds and calming blues seemed to express the confusion and wonder she felt inside. Lyra, on the other hand, had begun sculpting delicate figures, humans, animals, and strange creatures, shaped with a tenderness that reflected her growing understanding of love and connection. "I think I'm beginning to understand," Zaria said quietly, her voice thoughtful. "Humans don't just live to survive. They live to feel." Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing the surface of her latest sculpture. "Yes, they embrace every emotion, whether it's happiness or pain. And in that, they create something real, something that comes from their hearts." Elena smiled warmly at them. "That's exactly it. Emotions are the heartbeat of human life. They make us who we are." For the first time, Zaria and Lyra began to see the world not just as a chaotic place full of emotions, but as a beautiful, vibrant tapestry woven together by human experiences. They started to realize that emotions weren't something to fear. They were a part of the human spirit, and they gave people the strength to overcome anything. They could see it in the way humans loved each other, how they cared for their families, and how they worked together to build something meaningful. One day, after finishing a particularly large painting, Zaria stood back and looked at it. It was a mix of colors, bright yellows, deep blues, and swirling reds, that seemed to capture all the emotions she had felt since arriving on Earth. She hadn't even realized she had been painting her own journey. The confusion, the fear, the wonder, and the acceptance of it all. Lyra joined her, stepping back to admire the painting. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's like you've captured everything inside you." Zaria nodded, her heart swelling with a strange new feeling. "I never thought I could feel this way. It's freeing." It was then that Elena spoke up from behind them. "That's the power of art and emotion. It can set you free." The words stayed with Zaria long after they had finished their work for the day. She felt lighter, as though she had finally shed the weight of her past, the strict rules and cold logic of Drellis. For the first time, she felt like she was truly herself. Over the next few weeks, Zaria and Lyra began to experiment even more with their art. They no longer saw it as just a way to pass the time, or as something they had to learn. They saw it as a way to connect, to each other, to Elena, and to the world around them. They realized that through their art, they could speak a language that didn't require words. It was the language of emotion, a language that was understood by everyone, everywhere. One evening, as they sat together, sharing a meal in the cozy warmth of Elena's shop, Zaria and Lyra found themselves talking about their home, the planet Drellis. They had never really spoken about it before, but now it felt natural. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked gently, looking between the two girls. Zaria thought for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I miss the order, the control, but I also know that I could never go back to that way of life. It's not enough." Lyra nodded in agreement. "I don't think I could go back either. There's something about Earth, something about these emotions. It's alive. I feel like I'm truly living here." As they shared their thoughts, they realized that they had become something new. They had come to Earth as exiles, sent to a world they didn't understand. But now, they had become a part of it, embracing its emotions, its chaos, and its beauty. They were no longer just visitors. They were learning to live like humans. And in that, they found something they had never expected, a sense of belonging. As the weeks turned into months, Zaria and Lyra continued to grow in their understanding of Earth and its people. They had come to realize that their punishment, being sent to this strange, chaotic planet, wasn't as much a sentence as it was a gift. They had learned to open their hearts, to embrace the emotions they had been taught to suppress for so long. In doing so, they had begun to understand what it truly meant to be human. But even with their growing connection to Earth, something deep inside both of them still felt incomplete. The bond they had formed with Elena was strong, but they couldn't ignore the emptiness that came from being far from their home. Though Earth was beautiful in its own way, it was still so different from Trellis, the place where they had been raised. There were still moments when they felt the distance between themselves and the humans around them, moments when the isolation of being outsiders made their hearts ache. One evening, as Zaria and Lyra sat on the steps of Alina's shop, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Lyra spoke up. "Do you ever miss Trellis?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Zaria looked out at the city before them, the lights flickering on one by one as the night took hold. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "I miss the certainty, the way everything was so clear, but I don't miss the emptiness, the way emotions were always pushed away." Lyra nodded, her gaze focused on the sky. "I know what you mean. There was never room for something real. It was always about efficiency, about control. I didn't know what I was missing until we came here." Zaria turned to her, a slight smile on her face. "I don't think we ever realized how much we needed to feel, to be able to care, to love, to be free of the rules." The two of them sat in silence for a few moments, letting the evening air wash over them. It wasn't that they hated their home. It was just that Earth had become a place where they felt more alive, more connected to themselves and each other than they had ever felt before. The people here didn't live in fear of emotions. They embraced them, shared them, and let them shape their lives. As they continued to talk, Alina joined them, her footsteps light on the pavement as she approached. She sat down beside them, her eyes bright with warmth. "I can tell you two have come a long way. It's been amazing to see how much you've grown." Zaria and Lyra smiled, grateful for Alina's gentle support. "We've learned a lot from you," Zaria said. "You've shown us that emotions aren't something to be afraid of. They're what make us human." Alina's eyes softened with pride. "It's been incredible to watch you both discover that. You've made your own journey. It's not just about painting or sculpture. It's about finding a way to truly live, to connect with others." Zaria and Lyra exchanged a glance. In some ways, they had both found what they were searching for: understanding, freedom, and a sense of belonging. But there was still one thing they hadn't been able to let go of: the longing for a connection that went beyond their small circle. It was the one thing that still felt like a gap, a space they hadn't yet filled. The next day, as Zaria and Lyra were walking through the park, they encountered a group of children playing together. The children were laughing, running in circles, and chasing each other in a game that seemed to have no rules other than the joy of being together. Zaria and Lyra paused to watch, fascinated by the carefree way the children interacted with each other. There were no barriers, no expectations, just pure, unrestrained happiness. One of the children, a young girl with curly hair, looked up and noticed them standing nearby. "Hey, do you want to play with us?" she called out, her face full of excitement. Lyra's eyes widened, and she looked at Zaria, unsure of what to do. Zaria, who was usually more reserved, felt a strange pull in her heart. "Why not?" she said with a smile, surprising herself. The two alien girls stepped forward, joining the children in their game. They didn't understand all the rules, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about the connection they shared with the children, the simple joy of being in the moment together. For the first time since they arrived on Earth, Zaria and Lyra felt completely at ease. They were no longer outsiders. They were just two people playing, laughing, and enjoying the purest form of human connection. After the game, the children gathered around them, eager to know more about the two new players. Zaria and Lyra smiled and told them stories about their home planet, Trellis, carefully leaving out the details of their punishment. They spoke about the way their world was, about the way they had lived before they came to Earth. The children listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder, their curiosity endless. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, Zaria and Lyra realized something profound. They had come to Earth thinking they were here to learn a lesson, to be punished for their mistakes. But in the process, they had found something far greater, a new way of life, full of emotion, connection, and the freedom to be themselves. They had learned that the true beauty of life wasn't just in the art they created or the lessons they had learned. It was in the connections they formed with each other, with Alina, and with the people around them. And for the first time since they arrived, Zaria and Lyra realized that Earth wasn't just a place of exile. It was a place where they could truly live. The days passed, and Zaria and Lyra began to settle into their new life on Earth. They were no longer just visitors from a distant planet. They were participants in the rich tapestry of human life. The more they learned, the more they realized how much they still had to discover. Every day there was something new to see, something new to feel. The emotions that had once been foreign to them were now a part of who they were. Alina continued to be their guide, but now their bond had deepened beyond teacher and students. She had become a friend, someone they could confide in and trust. Zaria and Lyra had come to value the small moments with her. The quiet evenings spent discussing art, the cups of tea shared after long days of painting. It was in these moments that they learned the true meaning of connection. It wasn't just about shared interests or common goals. It was about being there for one another, offering support and understanding without needing to say anything. One day, as the three of them worked in the shop, Alina noticed something in Zaria's painting that caught her eye. "This piece," she said, stepping closer to examine the canvas. "It's different. You've really started to capture something deeper here." Zaria looked at the painting. It was a swirl of colors, vivid oranges, deep purples, and soft pinks that seemed to represent the emotion she had been struggling with for so long. There was fear, there was joy, and there was also something she couldn't quite define, something that felt like peace. "I'm not sure what it means yet," Zaria said quietly, "but I feel like I'm getting closer to understanding myself." Alina smiled softly. "Sometimes that's all art is, just a way to understand what's inside you." Lyra, who had been sculpting nearby, looked up with a thoughtful expression. "It's like we're learning to express things we didn't even know were there," she said. "I never realized how much I had to say until we came here." Zaria nodded, looking down at the painting again. I think we're not just learning about emotions anymore. We're learning how to be human." It was a realization that had been building inside both of them for some time. They had come to Earth thinking they were here to serve a sentence, to learn a lesson in humility. But the longer they stayed, the more they understood that their time on Earth wasn't about punishment. It was about discovery. They had been given a chance to explore the very essence of what it meant to be alive. Later that evening, after they had closed the shop and shared a quiet dinner together, Alina spoke with a hint of seriousness in her voice. "There's something I've been thinking about lately," she began. "It's about your future here on Earth." Zaria and Lyra exchanged a glance. "What do you mean?" Zaria asked. Alina set down her cup of tea and looked at them thoughtfully. "You've both come so far, but I think it's time to consider what comes next. You can't stay in the shop forever. You've experienced the beauty of Earth, but there's a whole world out there waiting for you to explore it." The thought of leaving the comfort of Alina's shop was both exciting and terrifying. Zaria and Lyra had found a sense of peace in the small, safe world they had created together. But Alina was right. There was so much more to learn, so much more to experience. The world beyond the shop was vast, full of different cultures, people, and emotions. Zaria and Lyra knew they couldn't hide in the shop forever. They had learned so much from Alina, but now it was time to take what they had learned and step out into the world. They had come to Earth as strangers, but now they were beginning to feel like they belonged. "We're ready," Lyra said softly, her eyes shining with excitement. Zaria took a deep breath, her heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. "Yes, I think we are." The next morning, they set out together. Alina had given them a small map of the city, pointing out places they could visit, people they could meet. It wasn't much, but it was enough to help them find their way. They walked through the streets of the city, feeling both excited and nervous. The world was different from what they had imagined, but it was also full of possibilities. They visited parks, museums, and cafes, trying to understand the way humans interacted with one another. They watched couples holding hands, children laughing, strangers helping each other. Everywhere they went, they saw evidence of the connections that made life on Earth so special. As they walked through a busy market one afternoon, Lyra stopped in front of a street performer, mesmerized by the music. A violinist was playing a soft, haunting melody that seemed to echo through the air, carrying with it a sense of longing and hope. Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she listened, moved by the beauty of the music. Zaria, standing beside her, felt the same stirrings in her heart. "It's like the music is telling a story," Lyra said, her voice soft with awe. Zaria nodded, her own heart touched by the melody. "It's the story of being human," she said quietly. In that moment, they realized that the journey they had begun was far from over. Earth had given them so much already: new emotions, new experiences, and a deeper understanding of themselves. But there was still so much more to explore. As they walked together through the crowded streets, Zaria and Lyra felt more alive than ever before. They were no longer aliens on a strange planet. They were part of something much bigger. They were part of humanity, a living, breathing testament to the power of connection, emotion, and growth. And no matter where their journey took them next, they knew one thing for certain: they were ready. Zaria and Lyra walked through the busy streets of the city, feeling both nervous and excited. The world outside Elena's shop was vibrant and full of life, much different from the quiet, controlled environment they had left behind on Drellis. They had left the safety of their small circle, but they knew they were ready to explore all that Earth had to offer. It wasn't just about learning anymore. It was about truly experiencing the world, its people, and its emotions. As they made their way through the city, they encountered many new things. Street vendors called out their goods, children played games in the park, and people walked by, lost in conversation or deep in thought. Zaria and Lyra had never seen such a wide variety of human experiences in one place. It was all so overwhelming yet beautiful. The joy, the sadness, the excitement, the quiet moments, they were all part of this strange, wonderful place. They came to a large square in the center of the city, where a group of performers was putting on a show. There were dancers twirling, musicians playing lively tunes, and acrobats flipping through the air. Zaria and Lyra stood in awe, watching the performers with wide eyes. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The energy in the square was infectious, and soon they found themselves smiling and tapping their feet to the rhythm of the music. "Humans are so expressive," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "They don't just live, they feel everything." Zaria nodded in agreement. "Yes, and they don't hide it. They share it with the world." The two of them stood there for a while, enjoying the performance and the energy of the crowd. They had always been taught that emotions should be controlled and hidden. But here, on Earth, emotions were celebrated. They were the heart of human life, and people wore them openly, without shame or fear. It was a new concept for Zaria and Lyra, but one they were beginning to understand more and more each day. As the performance came to an end, the crowd cheered and clapped, showing their appreciation for the performers. Zaria and Lyra joined in, clapping along with the others, feeling a sense of connection to the people around them. It was as if, for that moment, they were no longer outsiders. They were part of something much larger, the shared experience of humanity. After the performance, they wandered through the square, taking in the sights and sounds around them. They stopped at a small cafe where they sat outside and watched the world go by. Zaria ordered a cup of tea, while Lyra opted for a sweet pastry. As they sipped their drinks, they talked about their experiences so far, what they had learned, what they still didn't understand, and how much they had grown since arriving on Earth. I never realized how much life could be, Zaria said, her eyes thoughtful. Back on Trellis, everything was so structured. We never allowed ourselves to feel things deeply. But here, it's different. It's messy, but it's also beautiful. Lyra smiled, nodding in agreement. It's like every moment is alive with possibility. People here don't just exist, they live. And they share that life with each other. Zaria paused for a moment, considering Lyra's words. Yes, she said softly. And maybe that's what makes them strong. Their ability to feel everything, to experience life fully. That's what gives them the power to endure, to grow, to change. Lyra looked at her, her eyes sparkling with excitement. It's more than just surviving. It's about thriving, about connecting with others. And I think that's what we've been learning all along, how to truly live, how to feel deeply and share that with the world. Zaria smiled at her, a sense of warmth filling her chest. I think you're right. We've come a long way from the cold logic we grew up with. Just then, a man passed by, his arm around a woman's shoulders as they laughed together. Zaria and Lyra watched them for a moment, captivated by the simple joy of their connection. They had seen many couples on Earth, but this one felt different. It wasn't just love, it was a bond, a partnership built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and deep emotion. Do you think we'll ever understand love the way humans do? Lyra asked quietly, her eyes following the couple. Zaria thought for a moment before answering. I don't know, but I think we're getting closer. Love isn't just about passion or desire. It's about connection. It's about being there for someone, sharing your life with them, and feeling something real. Lyra smiled, her heart swelling with a newfound understanding. Maybe that's the heart of humanity. Not just their emotions, but their ability to form connections, to care for one another. The two of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the world around them. As they looked out at the people passing by, they realized that they had found something far greater than they had ever expected. They had come to Earth to learn, to grow, to understand emotions, but they had also found something deeper, something that connected them to the very essence of what it meant to be human. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the city, Zaria and Lyra stood up, ready to continue their journey. There was still so much more to see, so much more to experience. But now, they were no longer just observers. They were part of the world, part of the people, part of the shared human experience. And for the first time since they had arrived on Earth, Zaria and Lyra knew that they were no longer alone. They had found a place in this vast, beautiful world, and they were ready to embrace it fully. Zaria and Lyra stood together at the edge of a large park, watching as the people around them enjoyed the warm afternoon. The park was filled with families having picnics, friends chatting under the shade of trees, and children playing games with bright laughter ringing through the air. It was a scene of simple happiness, yet it felt like the perfect reflection of everything they had come to understand about humanity. For so long, they had been strangers to these emotions, these connections. They had arrived on Earth thinking they were here to be punished. But now, as they looked around at the lives being lived in front of them, they realized something they hadn't understood before. They had been given a chance to experience what it meant to truly be alive. Zaria turned to Lyra, a soft smile on her face. Can you believe how much we've changed? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. I never thought I would feel so much. It's like we've been reborn, but not in the way we expected. We found something so much more important. Zaria's smile grew, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace inside her, a peace that had eluded her for so long. We found each other, and we found the world. But most of all, we found ourselves. Lyra looked out across the park, taking in the scene of people living their lives in such beautiful harmony. When we first came here, everything seemed so strange and overwhelming. But now it feels like it's all part of the same story. The story of life, of growth, of connections. They had spent months learning, observing, and connecting with the people of Earth. They had formed bonds with Alina, who had shown them the way, and with the humans they had met along the way. They had learned that it wasn't enough to simply survive in the world. To truly live, one had to open their heart to the emotions that made life so rich: joy, sorrow, love, and everything in between. These emotions, they now understood, were what made humanity truly remarkable. As they stood in the park, a child ran past them, laughing as they chased a butterfly. Zeria and Lyra watched the child, their hearts warmed by the innocent joy they saw in the simple act of play. It was a reminder of the beauty that existed in every moment, no matter how small. "This is what it's all about, isn't it?" Lyra said, her voice soft with understanding. "Living in the moment, experiencing everything that comes our way. The good, the bad, the hard, and the easy. It's all part of the journey." Zeria nodded. "Yes, and I think we're finally ready to be part of that journey. We're not just visitors anymore. We're a part of this world, of this life. We've learned how to live, how to love, and how to share that love with others." Their journey had come full circle. They had started as two strangers, sent to Earth as a form of punishment. But over time, they had discovered that what they had thought was punishment was actually a gift, an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become something greater than they had ever imagined. As they walked deeper into the park, they saw Elena sitting on a bench nearby, waiting for them. Her face lit up as she saw them approaching, her eyes filled with pride. "You two have come so far," Elena said warmly as they sat beside her. "When I first met you, you were unsure of yourselves, unsure of this world. But now you're not just surviving. You're living. You've found your place here." Zeria smiled, feeling the deep sense of gratitude for everything Elena had done for them. "We couldn't have done it without you. You showed us what it meant to feel, to experience the beauty of life, and you gave us the courage to open our hearts to this world." Elena placed a hand gently on both of their shoulders. "You always had that courage within you. I just helped you see it." Lyra looked around at the people in the park, her heart full. "This is what it's all about, isn't it? Not just living, but living together, sharing experiences, supporting one another, and finding strength in our connections." Zeria nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Exactly. We may have come to Earth thinking we were alone, but now we know we're never truly alone. We're all part of this journey, all part of the same story." As the three of them sat there, watching the world unfold around them, Zeria and Lyra realized that their journey had only just begun. There were still many lessons to learn, many emotions to experience, and many people to meet. But now, they knew they were ready. Ready to live, ready to love, ready to be a part of humanity's incredible, beautiful story. The sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park. Zeria and Lyra sat there, side by side with Elena, knowing that no matter where their journey took them next, they would face it with open hearts and a deep understanding of what it meant to truly live. And for the first time since they had arrived on Earth, Zeria and Lyra felt at home.